All right, today we're going to talk about 3 strategies to help you resolve differences in your relationship. So stay tuned. Okay, so strategies to help you resolve differences. In my therapeutic practice and my coaching practice, as I work with individuals and couples who are running into differences in their relationship, these are 3 strategies out of a whole toolbox of strategies that are very common for me to use in helping couples work through those differences. And I'm excited today to talk with you about those strategies, and I hope in sharing them with you that you can learn opportunities and ways in which you can resolve those differences that are creating distance and disconnect and affecting the fulfillment that you're receiving and experiencing in your relationship. So let's jump right in on that. The first strategy is to remain turned toward your partner. Turn toward your partner in the conflict. Now, what do we mean by this turn toward? Well, this is a phrase that's coined a little bit by Dr. John and Julie Gottman, who are world-renowned researchers and educators and trainers on relational fulfillment and wellness. The principle of turning toward versus turning away just suggests this idea that we want to remember with our partner that we are on the same team. Now, it can be tricky to remember that when you're in conflict, especially when you have differences, and those differences are creating conflict in your relationship, disconnect in your relationship. Sometimes we can get in a mentality that my partner is my enemy, right? They are representing a thing that's going against the thing that I think, that I feel, that I want, right? And as a result of that, we can kind of treat them like the enemy. And in that way, couples will engage in tug-of-wars, right? Like both trying to pull to get their way or to get their idea represented or their thought represented in the relationship. We can get so focused on tug-of-warring one another that we enter into what I call a win-lose mentality. A win-lose mentality means that we're only going to have one winner and the other person's going to be a loser, right? And the objective of couples, when they're not careful in conflict, when they're running into differences, their objective is to win, right? They want their way, they want their side, they want their idea represented. And as a result of that, we can get so focused on winning the interaction, coming out on top, that we set our partner up to lose, right? That we win at their expense, right? They have to lose in order for me to get my way in the relationship. And it's just not a great or healthy way to resolve differences, to resolve conflicts in a relationship. We want 2 winners. We want a win-win, right? Which means in a dynamic like this, when we're working to create unity and oneness around differences, it means that we want to turn toward one another in the conflict, reaching out for one another in the conflict, both trying to create space for each partner to share with the goal and mentality of unity. At the end of it, we want to take what's most important to my partner and for them to consider what's most important to me. And together we create a win-win that might be some sort of a compromise of both needs, both preferences, both desires, right? So remembering to stay turning toward one another in the conflict and trying to incorporate the needs of both individuals in coming up with what the resolution might be. That's the first principle. The second principle is to remember that you don't own objective reality. You don't own objective reality, right? Now, as we go through life, we all perceive through our own lens. And I talk a lot about this principle, and I think it's so helpful for couples to remember, right? That I filter my life experiences. I filter the dynamics that I run into, the things that are going on in our relationship. I filter all of those through my perception lens, right? That means that my reality is subjective to me. But because it's the only reality I know, it feels like objective reality, even though it's very much subjective to me. And we can run into this issue in our relationship, right? That he'll feel like his thoughts, his feelings, the way that he's seeing is objective reality. And she'll feel like her thoughts, her feelings, the way that she's experiencing are objective reality. And then they collide with each other, both feeling like the way that they're seeing it is the only way it can be seen, right? Which makes very little room for another person's thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, right? Because our perception is the only reality we know, we accidentally sometimes believe that our perception is objective reality, and it's not. Our perception is subjective to our experience, and we have to keep in mind that our partner may have a different experience sometimes, and theirs is just as real for them as ours is for us, right? So we want to keep that in mind, that there's going to be two experiences at play. We want to be curious about those. We want to share about those. We want to get to a point that we both understand that better, so that I can incorporate the thoughts and the feelings and the experience that my spouse is having into the one that I'm having as well, that I can use their experience to add to mine, and that I can add mine to theirs, that together we can kind of create a shared experience versus getting too caught up on, nope, mine is the only way to think, feel, and act. And if you think different or feel different, right, or have a different experience than me, you're wrong, right? We want to be so careful about that. It creates so many difficulties when it comes to sharing and understanding one another, as well as what the solution should be at the end of our conflict. It just creates a lot of problem when we believe that we own objective reality. The third one is to offer grace, right? To extend grace to our partner often, and especially during conflicts of differences, right? When we're running into differences in the relationship, to try to extend that grace. And the reason I talk about this one, extending grace, which just means making room for the idea that my partner is going to have some imperfections. They're not always going to think 100% or feel 100%. Right? Or be on 100% behavior, right? All of us run into different inadequacies, insecurities, bad days, right? We're off our game often, and especially during conflicts, we're trying to learn how to be kind and nurturing, assertive, right? Not getting aggressive, not getting passive. We're trying to learn how to communicate. We're trying to learn how to share vulnerably, right? And a lot of times we're trying to learn how to do this without a lot of positive models in our world, which means that there's going to be a lot of stumbling as we try to figure this out. There's going to be a lot of things that we phrase wrong, or that we approach wrong, that we become too critical or too defensive. And it's easy to get caught up in a game of just identifying and tossing hypocrisies back and forth at each other, holding each other accountable, calling each other out, right? It's easy to kind of get caught up into that when we are both going to be pretty imperfect as we try to grow together. So extend that grace, right? As we're running into differences, as we have conflicts, we just want to be so careful that we don't end up in a situation where our expectations are perfection of one another, that we're expecting perfection, especially during times where we're trying to resolve a conflict or trying to overcome differences, right? These are strenuous, stressful, difficult, vulnerable times, and we're going to stumble through those sometimes. So let's give each other the benefit of the doubt, right? Let's, instead of looking for hypocrisies and calling out one another critically, being defensive with one another, blaming each other, instead of that, let's try to extend grace during those times, right? Make room for their imperfections as they make room for yours, and trying to share in that more realistic place that we don't have to be 100% on our game to still make positive progress toward one another. So let's try to extend that grace. So those are the three. Those are the three things, right? We want to be careful during conflicts that we're turned toward one another. We want to remember that neither one of us owns objective reality, right? We both have a subjective experience. And because of that, we want to make room for both people's experience, right? Versus getting too stuck in my way is the only way, the right way, right? And then the third one is this extending grace to one another. Let's make room for the idea that we're not always going to be able to be on our game. So instead of calling each other out during conflicts, let's work to understand each other better. So those are my 3 tips. In the comments below, share with me times that you've done well in applying one of those 3 concepts. Share with us a little bit about how you've done that, or somebody who's done that for you, and the difference that it's made in your relationship. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, we have a video course called Resolving Differences. I'll post it right here. So the Resolving Differences video course goes into many more tools and strategies for helping couples work through differences in their relationship. I think you'll find that highly valuable, especially if you find yourself resonating with some of these principles today. And I include worksheets and homework assignments and activities that you can use and apply to get better at that as a couple. So study that together, talk to each other about that, and let's see if we can't even get better and better at resolving differences in your relationship. As always, thank you for joining us. If you know anybody who could benefit from this content, please share it with them. And please support our channel by liking and subscribing. We're on a mission to help couples everywhere, and we really appreciate your support in that mission. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be together with you again soon. Take care.